Everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to our stock market outlook video sponsored by MarketSmith. As always, we'll talk about the major indexes and how they're performing. We'll talk about the leading stocks in the market as of this time. Then move on to a few different sources of sentiment, including my Twitter surveys, the name exposure index, as well as the put call ratio, and also the bulls versus bears poll. Then we'll move on to the IBD big picture article, and finally the GMI signal from richardlmoglen.com. And at the end of the video, I'll put all these different sources of information together and give you my take on the overall health of the market. If you do enjoy my analysis, please go ahead and take the time right now to leave me a like down below. It really helps me out and my channel. And let's dive right in and start with the NASDAQ composite. And of course, subscribe if you haven't already. The channel forgot to say that, but let's dive right into the index. So overall, we did have a big push up on this Tuesday, gap up and go, and we're back above the anchor view up from the highs here. If you draw that in TradingView or TC2000, you'll see that we've been holding that level. And so far we held last week's low, which I said was kind of essential for some type of rally attempt here. We held that on Monday, basically to a few pennies, and had a nice push into the end of the week, and did see some pullback here on the 9th, but so far ended the week pretty well, at least on the indexes. Now looking at this chart, this could just be a kind of intermediate uptrend within an overall correction. So really what is key next week is where we go from this point. Do we still go sideways and then push upwards? If so, we might return to all-time highs and restart this uptrend. But if we break out to the downside, which is definitely a possibility, with this just being kind of a flag within an overall correction, that is certainly a possibility as well, breaking below the 50-day and maybe pushing towards these lows right here. So keep an open mind. Anything can happen. All you have to do is have a plan in place, whether we continue up from here or continue to pull back and correct. So with that said, let's take a look at the S&P 500. This looks pretty similar to the NASDAQ. Let's bring up that chart here. And overall, you can see this is pretty strong, but also keep in mind that the NASDAQ composite as well as the S&P 500 are kind of market cap weighted, and Apple, Microsoft, Netflix, those mega caps are kind of carrying the market at this point, especially Apple. So if we bring up that chart here, this is almost a changing character in terms of an acceleration in the trend. Very short-term extended. The ideal buy point was right through here. Let me bring up this right here. Let's draw that in. And you can see from that point, advance quickly, base a little bit, and then continue with its uptrend pushing towards 180. And look at a weekly chart, you can kind of see the acceleration in this advance. So this stock is very strong, definitely short-term extended, and it's kind of holding up the market almost single-handedly as of this point, because many of the former leaders, Roku, all of these are basically correcting as of this point. Many stocks are down 20% from highs, and we did see some bounces last week, but many of them are just in overall downtrends below declining 50-day moving averages, while Apple and a few other of the big caps, Google, I think, as well, is holding up reasonably well. These are kind of supporting the rest of the market when we're seeing a lot of destruction happen in the growth space. So keep an open mind. If these start pulling back and correcting, that would be a bad sign for the overall market, especially these major indexes. So keep an open mind for basically whatever can happen next week. I also like to take a look at the IWM, the Russell 2000. And you can see that this is more like many of the growth stock name charts. We're in a downtrend here below a declining 21 EMA, and we had an intermediate kind of bounce here, and now we're pulling back once again just below 220. And I definitely want to see us hold these lows right here, and I would love to see us just kind of correct in time versus price and results to the upside, get back above the 200-day moving average, the 50-day as well. That would be very constructive. Looking at the IWO, this is very similar to the IWM, showing a lot of destruction here. You can see we broke out of a little channel, but we're still kind of pulling back here, and this looks more like a bear flag here, unable to recover the 200-day and 300 level, and we'll have to see where this goes from here, whether we continue downwards or if we base out and start kind of a bottoming process. Also taking a look at the FWY. This is another proxy for growth stocks. Once again, we're in a downtrend below a declining 21 EMA and 50 SMA, and we have to see where we go from here. And because we are below the 200-day moving average, I definitely want to see us rally above that, and I definitely don't want to see this moving average kind of curl to the downside. That could be the start of a stage 4 decline. So keep that in mind, that Apple, Google, and a few select other names are kind of holding everything up. And we have to see where we go from here. If we continue to correct and see Apple and Microsoft, Google lose those key moving averages, that would definitely be a negative for the overall market. And two other gauges I'm watching pretty closely are Tesla. As Tesla goes, so does kind of the growth space at this time. And right now we're still basing. We're holding that 1,000 level, which I think is key. But if we lose this level, and especially lose this low, I think we could be in for a longer term basing process with Tesla, maybe a retest of the 900 level, as well as kind of filling out this gap. So keep that in mind. And also Nvidia is a good gauge in the growth space, another institutional quality leader. So far we're holding above 300. I think that level is key. And once again, I definitely want to see us hold above this past week's low. I think that's very, very important. And I'd love to see us just kind of break this intermediate flag to the upside and start to trend above the 21 EMA, get back above that key moving average. But as I mentioned, many stocks are hit pretty hard. I brought up Roku earlier. A lot of former leaders as well, I think, are turning into laggards. Peloton, another example of this, just in a downtrend at this point. Bring up a few more leaders. You've got apps here. You can see it's in a downtrend and is just rallying back into the 21 EMA. And I think it's really important, basically, whether we base out through time and kind of pop through this level, or if we start to curl to the downside, that would definitely be a negative for the market. So keep an open mind, never fall in love with a stock. Make sure it's staying within its trend if you are long shares at this point. So that said, let's go over to TC2000 and talk through some potential leaders at this point, as well as go through some previous leaders and just go through all these charts. Many of them are pulling back and are kind of broken as of this point and just need a significant basing process. So first, let's talk about the potential leadership here. These are stocks that are close to all-time highs or breaking out to new all-time highs and are showing significant RS relative to the other growth stocks in the market. So going over to a daily chart, we've got CIEN, had a nice gap up on the highest volume in the past basically year here, breaking out of this longer term consolidation. And overall, you can see a nice fall through as well. So we'll have to see how this chart builds out. I'd love to see it just kind of go sideways here as the market kind of finds its footing and then break out and reconfirm through these highs right here. I think that would be a very good positive for this stock. SIMO also caught my eye here, significant relative strength here, as you can see from the RS line, a huge breakout on volume and basically going sideways as the overall market is still a little bit iffy at this point. Next up, we've got Ford, a nice breakout through this DTL on Friday on volume, really nice action holding above that 21 EMA as the overall market is pulling back, and definitely want to watch, especially because this does kind of have that EV theme going for it with the electric Ford F-150. So we'll have to see how this goes, whether this gets sold next week or just kind of falls through to the upside and starts to trend above those key moving averages. MXL also acting really nicely, and the semis still are holding up pretty well as a group, so that's definitely a group to watch. BLTR also trending above the moving averages. Snow holding up above the 21 EMA. That looks pretty good. Definitely a little bit shaky here, but so far it is holding those KMAs. Apple, we talked about, nice push up here, holding that 10-day moving average on a closing basis. And if you are along the stock, I think the 10-day would be a pretty good way to trail your stops up, or even because it is kind of accelerating to the upside here, you can kind of put your stop at 2 days ago's low and just kind of trail it that way as it continues to make progress. AMBA also holding up reasonably well. It did kind of get sold down here on the earnings gap up, but is holding up above the 21 EMA, so looks decent. PUBM still going sideways after this highest volume ever here. I would love to see it kind of reconfirm through the 40 level here. Roblox also holding up above the 21 EMA. Marvel, nice gap up here and falling through to the upside. I would love to see it just kind of hang out here, form a structure above those key moving averages. LRCX also trending above the KMAs, looks pretty good. Microsoft also a really nice push on this Friday. So once again, along with Apple, kind of supporting the rest of the market as well, but definitely showing relative strength as of today. INTU also holding up well above the 10-day moving averages. Qualcomm holding up well within this overall base. You could draw a DTL right here, or even a horizontal line right near kind of 190. Low also holding the 10-day moving average for an extended time. Nice push from this base breakout. Google holding up pretty well as well. Sky above the 10-day moving average. ON also trending nicely after this huge gap up, the highest volume ever, and really nice fall through on this name. Tesla holding that 50-day for now, but we'll have to see whether it sticks above this low and also this one and the key 1000 level. And lastly, we've got NVIDIA. We already talked about this, but I want to see it hold above 300 and kind of break out of this overall flag within the structure. So those are some potential leadership as of this point. Let me know any names I really forgot that are showing a lot of relative strength as of this point. And now let's run through quickly the previous leaders and just kind of talk about their overall charts. So here, let's sort by that weekly change and start with TAS. So overall, a lot of them show this pattern, longer term downtrend, and now kind of gapping up, forming a flag. And we'll have to see whether it builds out from here and pushes to the upside or falls through to the downside. Roku, pretty much the same thing. It did have the highest volume ever here, but undercut that low on this Friday right here. Bros, downtrend. Still watching this one because it is holding kind of the 43 level and is showing a little bit of relative strength here, at least the past few days. We'll have to see what happens. This could enter a longer term institutional due diligence phase. ARFM, also really nice push off these lows, upside reversal, oops reversal on this Monday, now just kind of going sideways and forming that flag that we're seeing on a lot of these names. Apps, also a nice bounce here, but back into the 21 EMA, and we'll have to see where it builds from here. HUT just kind of getting sold off. A lot of these Bitcoin miners are showing really poor relative strength, as you can see from the RS line over the past few weeks. Bill also in the same pattern, downtrend below a declining 21 EMA. S as well, although pretty nice kind of choppy bottom here the past few days, and you are seeing a lot of volume coming in at these levels. DDOG holding that 50-day moving average, and this actually looks a lot better than the majority of these, and we're just below the 21 EMA as of this point. Team below the 50-day moving average. Once again, a nice upside reversal, balance, and we'll have to see whether it goes to the upside or the downside. A lot of these could kind of use a few weeks to kind of build out these charts and build out these bases. TDD doesn't look too bad, just below this prior pivot, but I didn't like that it lost it. In a healthy environment, this would have held right at these levels and kind of just chopped around as the market kind of figures itself out. Mara, like the other Bitcoin related stocks, getting hit pretty hard below the key moving averages as of this point, but is holding that 200-day moving average. Skin just kind of chopping around, rallied into the 21 EMA and got sold off on Friday. Crowd looks pretty bad, very choppy in here and just in an overall downtrend, but is trying to find support near kind of this level, 188. So I definitely want to see that hold if we do experience some more weakness in the market. In mode, pulling back and just starting an overall basing process, and a lot of these kind of look like the left side of a base to me. ASAN got sold off really hard, highest volume ever on this gap down. Definitely a no touch for me for the time being. This chart needs to heal. Domo also getting sold very hard, and this is why it's really important to have your stops in with your broker and set at the bottom of these structures because they can fall apart very quickly. You had a fail kind of push up here from this flag, and I don't know if this was earnings or this was earnings, but definitely some negative catalysts coming into this name. AEHR still forming out a base here below the moving averages, but looks like it's kind of finding a bottom here, a little bit more rounded than the other one, so that is a good sign. Zscaler, these bars are red flags, and even this one, and also this day is kind of a stalling day on higher volume. So keep an eye out for those little signs of weakness that can kind of get you ready to sell if we do have a gap up and kind of a sell off after earnings like we had on this bar. Dash getting sold pretty hard below all the key moving averages. Coin looks like it's trying to find a bottom here, but did pull back pretty hard on Thursday and Friday. Netflix below the key moving averages. LC getting sold off here below all the KMAs. DOCN also finding resistance at the 50-day and 21 EMA. SPT back at the 200-day moving average. SI breaking down pretty hard and looks like it's forming out a bear flag here below the KMAs. And overall, because this is so illiquid here, it's not really a focus when the market is in pullback and correction mode. I prefer, if I do trade, trading more liquid names in those type of environments. EMPH back at the 50-day moving average. It did lose the anchor VWAP from that earnings gap up, but I would love to see it hold this low as well as that 50-day KMA. AMD just kind of pulling back here to the 50-day moving average. If we go to a weekly chart, it looks like it's right at its 10-week moving average, so a potential point of support here. U pulling back below the KMAs, and SC also looks kind of like crowd here. Looks like it needs significant time, and if you do own shares, be careful here. We're in a downtrend, and nobody knows how long this can last. UPST lost a 200-day moving average as well as the prior pivot, so keep that in mind. Definitely showing relative weakness the past few weeks. Net also selling off pretty hard. I wouldn't be surprised to see it back at its 200-day moving average sometime soon. And lastly, we've got Peloton below all the KMAs. So that's a quick run through of some previous leaders, and many of them show significant damage. And even if they did kind of rally last week, they need a few weeks to really build out a proper base. And moving on, let's talk about my watch list from this previous week and how it performed. And overall, let's sort by that weekly change. Many of these did see some attempted bounces. Snow, nice push off these lows. POBM we already talked about. Roblox as well. Yell, a potential high type flag setup, tried to break out on these days and kind of broke a downward flag here, but now it's just kind of building out another pivot below these levels. So definitely want to watch in the coming days and weeks. EDR attempted a breakout here, a little bit choppy for sure. And this would have been the ideal buy point back near these levels. And that's around 29 or so, but did pull back and kind of rebase against this 29 level. BLD just kind of going sideways above the 21 EMA. NVIDIA, we talked about. TNDM, really nice push here, but did sell off on Thursday and Friday. PFE still forming out a flag against the 21 EMA. Nice push on Thursday and Friday as well. SPLK tried to rally here, but then you had a significant gap down against the 21 EMA. Not really on my focus list anymore. Zim also an attempted breakout here, then downside reversal, bearish outside day. Definitely want to be out as this goes red to green. GFS still one to watch, forming out a little bit of a base here. You could draw a DTL right here, and I want to see some fall through after a potential 2-2 reversal here after an upside reversal on Friday. Wire also pointing back to the 50 SMA. I did want to see it just kind of stick above the 21 EMA, so not really a focus anymore. These two bars kind of show me that there's some distribution within this stock. And lastly, BNTX just kind of sold off the entire week, never gave a setup. I want to see it kind of go sideways and then fall through to the upside after the nice push late last week. So overall, that's a run through of my previous watch list. Definitely some tremble bounces here, but overall, because we are in a kind of choppier environment, things have been tough to trade. But make sure you guys tune in tomorrow. I'll be posting my next list of ideas on Sunday. So moving on, let's talk about sentiment from a few different sources and start my Twitter surveys here. And overall, we saw an increase in bullishness from 30.2%, now 37.4%. Still pretty low here. Yeah, nothing really actionable based off this information. Looking at the name exposure index is definitely pretty promising. We're seeing a significant drop from 87 to 69. And in 2 weeks, it's basically gone from 103 down to 69. Definitely a constructive trend from a contrarian point of view. And looking at the bulls versus bears poll, we're seeing the lowest levels in quite a while. And once again, a very significant drop over the past 2 weeks. And lastly, we've got the put call ratio where we saw a really strong increase here back up to 1, but didn't manage to push all the way to 1.15. So overall, in terms of sentiment, we are seeing some fear coming to the market 100%. But we'll have to see what the market indexes, the leaders, and the names you're watching perform. That's the most important thing. This is just kind of a secondary indicator for me. So overall, moving on to the IBD Big Picture article, the headline is Stock Market Gains as Inflation Hits 39-Year High, but note the split, bears bite these stocks. Overall, they discuss the action of the overall market here, how the NASDAQ managed to close just above its 50-day moving average, and how we definitely want to see it kind of carry on the momentum in the upcoming week. Overall, they talk about the kind of divergence with the Russell 2000 reversing lower here, and they discuss the VIX as well. They also mention the inflation numbers here, which is definitely pretty high here. And lastly, they discuss the divergence I was talking about, how Apple, Microsoft are kind of holding up the rest of the market, while a lot of smaller cap tech names are getting hit pretty hard. So overall, their view is still a market in correction. And basically, here's your leaders up in volume and some leaders down in volume as well. Lastly, we've got the GMI signal, which is still red since December 1st, and the GMI score on Friday was a 3 out of 6. So overall, my current view is a market in correction, but we're pretty close to a potential fall through day, so we'll have to see whether the market chooses a direction to the upside or downside and be ready for whatever happens. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel, and I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.